Well, welcome to the podcast. My name is Father Bill W. I'm an Episcopal priest and live here in Austin, Texas. I've had the gift of recovery since December the 27th of 1972. Very grateful for that to a whole lot of people. And purpose of these podcasts is to try to go deeper into the psychology, the history, and the spirituality that underlies 12-step recovery. I hear people saying, they're going to treatment, and sometimes it really makes me wonder, well, what are they getting in treatment? Are they getting the real things that they need to get a hold of and that need to get a hold of them so that their lives can change? Anyway, that's what we're about. If you haven't visited the website, I encourage you to go to it, two-way prayer, and it'll teach you the form of prayer meditation that they did in the early days of the recovery program. We're starting a new series, and this series is going to be centered on the work of Viktor Frankl. I'm very careful of my pronunciations. So Frankl is I think the way it is pronounced. Frankl was a psychiatrist, and he was the founder of what's known as the Third Vienna School of Psychiatry, more commonly known as logotherapy. And here to kind of take us to school and help us understand Frankl and his work is an old-time friend of mine, Tom Lavin, who is coming to us from Reno, Nevada. And I have to pronounce that one properly because my son lives there now, and every time I screw up, he corrects me. So Nevada. Tom is a psychotherapist, marriage and family therapist, and a licensed clinical alcohol and drug counselor. He served for many years as adjunct faculty at the University of Nevada School of Medicine, Psychiatry, and Behavioral Sciences. And as I mentioned, Tom and I go back about half a century or so. And for much of that time, he's been out in the world helping people find greater meaning and purpose in their lives, in part through applying the principles that Viktor Frankl really pioneered. And I think you're going to find that Tom is in full alignment with the big book statement that says the spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. He's got a helpful website and a newsletter that can be accessed in the show notes. And I think that's what I needed to say to get us going. Tom, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Bill. Great to be with you.
It's good to be with you again. I get out to Nevada every once in a while, and we try to connect. And it's always good. It's always good. Our lunches go about 3 or 4 hours. So
minimum.
Tom, let me start off with asking you if you remember what it was that interested you in Viktor Frankl, maybe what drew you to him, why did he appeal to you, and then throw that question back at me because I'd like to share for a minute on that one.
Okay, all right. Well, Bill, I'm sure that you've had moments like this, and our listeners have too, what Carl Jung referred to as synchronicity, where things come together, things in the outside world and what's happening mentally, emotionally, and spiritually within us, and things come together. So in terms of, I want to reference my personal life and I want to reference my professional life as coming together with beginning to study logotherapy in 1993.
93, okay.
And how that has made a difference in my life. And I hope, and the feedback I get from my patients is it's made a difference in their life too. In 1993, I had been an addictions counselor for 14 years. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, I was a clinical supervisor in the addictions field. And I was the executive director of a program that treated dual disorder clients. As I was a healthcare executive at that time, that was no longer fulfilling. And so I resigned and dropped back down to doing therapy work and enrolled in the University of Nevada counseling program. And that's where I began to study Viktor Frankl's logotherapy as a therapy of choice I wanted to focus on. And I can expand on that if you want to, but that's the professional part, Bill. The personal part is In 1993, I had been sober for 19 years at that time. I had benefited from 6 months of inpatient treatment and 5 months at a halfway house, and probably about 2,500 AA meetings by that time in the first 19 years. And when I began to study logotherapy, I said, oh my gosh, I got to logotherapy through the back door, the steps of AA, the principles of AA, the fellowship of AA, my sponsors, my role models, my mentors in recovery had been teaching me for 19 years how to live a meaningful life. And at that point in time, Bill, what came together then is that I began to see how the principles and the language and the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous meshed so well with what Viktor Frankl developed in logotherapy, which of course is a existential, spiritual-based therapy. They meld together so well. It had a significant impact on my life at that time. And I began to integrate it into my clinical practice with patients. And I saw that integrating the two had a tremendous influence on their life as well. And so that's kind of like the beginning of integrating that synchronous, momentous time in my life.
Wow.
Of my personal recovery and Viktor Frankl's logotherapy, Bill.
Wow. Well, let me take a turn at that because it surprises me. I met the good Viktor a little earlier. I think you know some of my story that I was in the Jesuits and I wound up going to live on Skid Row for 1 year at the Salvation Army. I'm looking at my life and it is without meaning. Totally. Well, almost totally. It was damn close to being total. And that's where I got a hold of his book, Man's Search for Meaning. And there he was finding meaning and purpose for his life in a concentration camp. A Nazi concentration camp. And that gave me a spark of hope that, mad as this scene feels to me, maybe something good can come from this. Maybe I can get through this. And I don't know that I understood a hell of a lot of what he was saying in there, other than you got to hang on to meaning and purpose above all things. I got that. And don't check out before the show is over.
And Bill, the good news that Frankl shared was every life has meaning and value.
That's right.
And beginning to think, well, maybe my life can have meaning and value. So Frankl talks about self-transcendence, which means getting beyond ourselves. And of course, the 3rd step prayer and the 7th step prayer in the big book is about relieve me the bondage of self. Let me let go of self. Frankl talked about de-reflection, which is don't continue to focus on the problem, either get into the solution, or like the old timers in AA would say, why don't you put that up on the shelf for a while and focus on some living, and maybe the answer will come to you. So just kind of let go and let the answer come to you. The other thing, of course, is when we read the promises on page 83 and 84, that's a beautiful description of living a meaningful life, isn't it, Bill?
Absolutely.
We'll no longer regret the past, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then this idea of that Frankl would talk about being conscious and responsible, which is very much, what we learn about in the 10th and 11th and 12th step. And of course, responsibility is in the house cleaning steps 4 through 9. And so this is where I say I came to logotherapy through the back door. So when I decided to focus on that as a therapy, I had studied a number of therapies in the program. I wanted one that was more explicitly spiritual. I wanted to investigate that. And I knew kind of in the back of my mind that Frankl's book had a spiritual dimension to it. I'd had his book on my bookshelf for several years. I'd never read it. I picked it up because I said, I'm going to investigate this. I read it. I was totally enthralled. I read the book that evening. His own personal experience in Auschwitz and Treblinka, and the character, his courage, his faith in a higher power, his vision, his acceptance of tragic optimism, his language of the heart. The old timers in AA would talk about AA as the language of the heart. He spoke from the heart. and from his guts and from blood, sweat, and tears,
Mm.
which we appreciate in recovery. And then at the end of the book, Man's Search for Meaning, then he begins to talk about what is this technology? What is the way that we find meaning in our life? And I fell in love with it. I said,
Mhm.
I love this. In a
Uh-huh.
way, I've been doing this already now, again, through the back door of recovery for 14 years, where I had hit bottom 19 years before, excuse me. I was totally inspired and it added to my life. Like one of my sponsors in the first few years of my recovery, he said, continue to learn and investigate and integrate things. And so I looked at integrating Frankl's logotherapy in with what I've been learning in recovery for myself. And then I began to integrate that in my work with patients, and my life improved even more. And my patients were finding it meaningful, Bill.
I think it's so important that we not only find the right people to walk with us
Yes.
in recovery,
Yeah.
but we find the right authors
Yeah.
and the right books,
Yeah.
because they have a tremendous amount to give us
Yes.
that are going to supplement, augment the program that we're learning. And
Yeah.
if it's good stuff,
Yeah.
it's gonna dovetail.
Yeah.
Tell
Yeah.
us about Frankl. Give us a little background on his life. You know a lot
Yeah.
more about him than I do, and
Okay.
just
So,
bring us
Bill,
up
some of the
to
things that
speed.
jump off in my memory of his autobiography and biography, I did want to mention there's a 350-page authorized biography of him called When Life Calls Out to Us.
Yeah, you had me read it. You had me read it. So.
Yes, yeah. And so if people want to look more deeply into this, it's available. But here are some things that I really appreciate about Frankl. As a young Jewish man in Vienna, and Vienna was the center of European culture at that time, he was very studious and he was an observant Jew, came from a really good family.
Mm-hmm.
He studied really hard. Of course, science in the early part of the 20th century was really developing in terms of chemistry and biology and physics. And the schools were enamored with science. And to the extent that in the schools, they were beginning to look at human beings as just chemical processes. And Frankl stood up in class one day and said, I am not just a chemical process. I am not just a reaction formation. There is something deeper in me than that. And that's being human, that transcends. And later he would come to call that as reductionism, where we look at human beings in their lowest form. And he also called it determinism, where we're determined that we don't have free choices. So as like a junior high school student, he had that insight and he stood up for that. Other things, Bill, that stand out to me when I think about Frankl, when the Nazis had come and were taking over Austria, he was a practicing physician. He and his new wife, Tilly, could have left because he had protection as a physician to come to the United States. He was distraught. What should I do? Should I go to the United States with my wife, or should I stay in Vienna and take care of my aging parents? What should I do? What should I do? He went to a church in Vienna, a Catholic church that had been virtually destroyed. He walked among the rubble and he picked up a piece of marble. It was the Roman numeral 4 for the fourth commandment: honor your father and your mother and live well in the land. And at that moment, he said, that's my answer from God, is I need to stay here. And so his faith and his commitment to his faith and to his parents, his love of his parents, he ended up staying in Vienna, of course.
That's the synchronicity you
Yeah,
were speaking of earlier.
yeah. And that
Yeah,
openness, hopefully, that we can have, huh?
yeah,
Yes, Bill.
yeah.
And so he stayed. Then what happened then, his wife became pregnant with their first child. The Nazis made them abort the child because Jews weren't allowed to have children.
Jeez.
His wife, his mom and dad were taken to concentration camps. Frankl had a hope that he referred to this later as tragic optimism, that as painful and tragic as our lives is, he would hope for the best and he would work for the best no matter what. His wife was a beautiful young woman. He knew she would be sexually abused, that because of their strong Jewish tradition, she might kill herself rather than being abused. And this gets back to his ethics about doing what's right in the moment. He said, Tilly, do whatever you have to do to survive so we could be together. So Frankl's in these 3 or 4 concentration camps. His dad is killed, his wife is killed, and his mom is killed. And he suffers from typhus. He's really ill, but he showed up as a physician, again, self-transcendence and creative values. He showed up as a physician and as a psychiatrist to tend to all the other men and women in the concentration camp, to help them have hope, to help them make it through one day at a time, to not give up. As they called it, Bill, those people who gave up, they called it running into the wire. They would run into the barbed wire. To help people not run into the wire, but maintain hope one day at a time. So that kept him going. Just like we talk about the 12-step in recovery, right? We get outside of ourselves to help others, and in doing that, we help ourselves. Well, he did that for years in the concentration camp. So that's another thing that sticks out to me about him. He never gave up. The other thing is he envisioned that he would survive the concentration camp, and he envisioned himself writing books about how to find meaning in life, giving lectures to physicians and lay people about how to find meaning in their life. And he maintained that hopeful vision, that optimism throughout his incarceration. I think that's a lesson for all of us. And of course,
I don't want to stop you, but
Yes.
you're hitting on so many beautiful points here. If
Okay,
you can, I hope your memory's better than mine. Kind of pick up where you left off. But I just wanted to touch on Bill Wilson
yeah,
because this doesn't get that much attention. He has his hot flash, his white light experience
Yeah.
in detox,
yeah,
but he like Frankl had a vision that something inside of him was telling him, you now have the key to helping other people.
yes, yeah.
And it doesn't get the attention it needs, but I think it was more powerful perhaps than the white light.
Bill, that's a really good point. I get chill bumps just hearing you say that.
Yeah.
Yes, that is really powerful. And of course,
Mhm.
Bill not only had that vision, but he had the power to carry it out.
It
He
comes
faithful,
through you. If you're clear in it, if
yeah,
you're doing God's will,
yeah,
look out.
yeah,
Power is about to show up.
yes, yes. And that definitely happened with both Bill
Yeah.
and with Dr. Frankl.
I hear it. No, I hear it.
Yeah.
I hear it. I
And
hear the
so
story.
the other thing that a couple of things that come to my mind then after Frankl left from the concentration camp, as people will read about in the biography, of course, understandably, he went through terrible PTSD
Mm.
for several years, recovering from the trauma of that. What
Mhm.
happened with his wife and the aborted child and his mom and his dad and all the human suffering, the people that he ministered to for 3 years. So he's human. He's human. He suffered. And which, of course, we'll talk about his third way of finding meaning is by living through suffering in a meaningful way. We'll talk about that later, I'm sure. Oh, the other thing is, Bill, the book that we're studying, The Doctor and the Soul, after his child was aborted, he was writing that book, The Doctor and the Soul, then. Some people think he wrote these books about finding meaning in life after the concentration camp. Doctor and the Soul was started after he had studied and rejected Freud and Adler, and he was positing meaning in life as essential. He was writing The Doctor and the Soul. When they put him in the rail car to go to the concentration camp, he hid it in his overcoat. When he got to the concentration camp, they took his overcoat off with his book in it that was he considered to be his child, his baby,
Mhm.
and threw it away. And he was totally horrified. So the other thing he did in the concentration camp, along with ministering to people, because he had typhus and he knew if he fell asleep at night, he could be liable to dying. And so he would stay awake at night, and somebody smuggled him little scraps of paper and a pencil, and he began to recreate his book so he would have it when he left the concentration camp. So that sticks out to me. Again, finding meaning in suffering, self-transcendence, tragic optimism. After he left and the camp and started working on Man's Search for Meaning then, and going through, the rigors of recovery from trauma. He met a young nurse at the hospital. He went on with life. He married her. They had children. They had grandchildren. So this is another thing that Frankl said. Says, say yes to life in spite of everything.
You don't know what life is going to bring you.
Yes.
You don't
Yeah.
know.
Yes. And in fact, though, I think Frankl would say, if we have a sense of optimism, we are going to create an optimistic outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're demoralized and we're giving up, we're going to reap that. Another interesting story, and then I'll let it go. So Frankl's living in Vienna, and somebody moves in next to him, and he goes, "Gosh, I know that guy. I know that guy. Who is that?" And he'd shake his head. "I know that guy. I know that guy." All of a sudden, it came to him. He said, "That's Officer Schultz. He was my guard in Treblinka in the concentration camp." And he goes, "Oh my gosh, what am I going to do?" Of course, his immediate visceral reaction was one of revulsion, and I have to get out of here.
Yeah.
But then he said, "Wait a minute, the war's over." He went and got a bottle of wine. He got a loaf of bread. He knocked on Schultz's door. He said, "Mr. Schultz, I'm Viktor Frankl. You were my guard in Treblinka." And this guy was in horror. He went to shut the door. Frankl put his foot in the door and wouldn't let him shut it. And he made him open it up. And Frankl said, "Mr. Schultz, the war's over. I forgive you. Let me give you this bottle of wine and this loaf of bread." So those are some things that stick out to me about Viktor Frankl and the kind of man he was. And again, Bill, like you started off with, the spiritual life is not a theory, we have to live it. One of the things that probably you and I and so many people we love about Viktor Frankl is he didn't just create this therapy in a fancy school in Vienna. He lived it. He lived through it. It's blood, sweat, and tears.
Right.
And so we know he lived it. He didn't just make up this therapy by some experimental lab with students in Vienna.
He's right up there with the big guys, though, huh? In terms of
Yeah,
influence and
yeah.
an intellectual giant. Give us his history vis-a-vis Freud and Adler.
Yeah.
And maybe
Yeah.
I'll throw a little Jung in there too. I don't know. I wasn't
Yeah.
planning on it, but
Yeah.
the two of them sound very similar to me,
Yeah.
Jung and Frankl, but
Yeah. And that
different.
they both certainly did honor the spiritual dimension of
Right.
life, didn't they, Bill? Yeah.
Right. They
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
Let me just say this. The main difference between Frankl and then on one hand and Freud and Adler on the other is that they were deterministic. They believed that human beings are driven by certain drives that leads to certain really non-decisions in life. We're driven. We don't make decisions. We are driven, Freud said, by pleasure and psychosexual desire. Adler said we are driven by a will to power.
Right.
And so, and Frankl said, no, it's not a matter of drivenness. We have freedom to make choices. And so Frankl ended up departing from both of them. That's the fundamental reason, is that he saw in man, we had the ability to transcend our instincts and our history and our psychosocial development. And there's something else, and he would call that spirituality, also known as logos, which is meaning and spirituality. And that he developed the therapy then to access that dimension of human life, to dignify and hold sacred what it is to be human, and to, when we are troubled or when we need healing, to be able to go to that dimension in life to find healing and meaning. So that's kind of a short synopsis.
No, that's good. That's good. Yeah. The great reality is within, and it's pretty damn powerful.
Yes.
And if you can just tap into it, you're going to find your meaning.
Yes.
You're going to find it. So the will to pleasure is Freud. The will to power is Adler.
Yeah.
And then the I guess it's the will to meaning.
I think I think Frankl would, to kind of get beyond that will or willfulness. I think that's why he called it man's search for meaning. That there's an innate desire, a yearning to find meaning.
Right.
And then Frankl wrote a whole book on this. He called it the unheard cry for meaning. And he talked about how so many physicians and psychiatrists and psychologists will deal with depression or anxiety or OCD or attempt to cure the addictive disorder. And he kind of referred to that as like, he didn't use this terminology, but I will. He said that was like changing deck chairs on the Titanic.
Right.
He said the fundamental thing that really makes a difference is having a sense of meaning in life. And that's what therapy needs to be built on, is having a sense of meaning and purpose. Kind of similar to Dean Ornish, the renowned cardiologist, Bill, who has treated thousands of patients in his clinic in Southern California, and so many of them were unmotivated. He would say, "Okay, you've had a heart attack, so you please stop smoking, develop a social life, start exercising and eating healthy." And people wouldn't do it. And he goes, "Oh my gosh, what's missing here? How come people
Yeah.
aren't motivated to do this?" And what he saw was, these people do not have a sense of meaning or purpose in their life. So I need to backpedal here, help people get in touch with their feelings and learn to express them, and help people have a reason to live, have a sense of meaning, and then they'll be motivated to stop drinking, stop smoking, start eating healthy, and start exercising. Very similar to Frankl.
It's revisiting the big book over and over
Yeah.
again, but
Or,
coming at it in a different way.
yeah,
Coming at it in a different way. That's what I love about some of these authors. You know, I mean, the big book says there's nothing new. This is universal
yeah,
stuff
Bill, yeah,
that we're dealing with here.
yeah,
But I think if people can hear it in this voice and then in that voice,
yeah.
it makes sense and comes alive.
Yes, that's been my experience and the experience of my patients and their families
Right.
too, Bill.
Yeah. So the two books we mentioned, and the first one I read was Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah,
But you recommended that we do The Doctor and the Soul
yes,
to go through to get a
uh,
deeper understanding
yeah,
of what's at the base of this thing. So
yeah,
if you guys are listening, you're perfectly free to go buy both books. You
yes,
know?
yeah,
But if you want to kind of tag along with the discussion, we're gonna be centering in on the Doctor and the Soul. Okay,
yes,
first several chapters in there.
yes.
Um, okay, I put a link to the book in the show notes, and let's begin with taking a peek at the introduction. When we were kind of planning this, I thought, well, the introduction, get through that in a hurry. No way. It's only 10, 15 pages, but my God, it's like eating cheesecake.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
yeah,
it
it's
is
all
so
good. Yeah,
rich, you
yeah,
know,
it's rich and dense. Yeah,
it's powerful, powerful stuff. So we're
yeah,
going to focus on that. What I'm going to do is I picked out some quotes that were meaningful to me. I
yeah,
hope they're meaningful to you, Tom. And I'm
yeah,
going to read them to you and then just ask you to comment.
yeah, Bill.
So,
And let's, like you had said, let's both comment on it. Okay.
okay, yeah,
Yeah, great. Yeah.
yeah. You're the man though. There's on this
All
thing.
right,
You're the
Bill. All
man.
right. All right, Bill. All right. All right.
I'm never short of an opinion. So
Okay, Bill.
I appreciate the offer to chime in, and
Okay, Bill.
I'll take you up on that. And as
Okay.
I said, we don't have to get through this thing in a hurry.
Okay.
Let's, because I think in the conversation,
Yeah.
looking at this stuff in depth, that's where the juice is at. So we'll get going. Man lives in three dimensions: the somatic, the body, the mental, and the spiritual. The spiritual dimension cannot be ignored, for it is what makes us human. To be concerned about the meaning of life is not necessarily a sign of disease or neurosis. It may be, but then again, spiritual agony, boy, it's a lovely phrase. Spiritual agony may have very little connection with the disease of the psyche. The proper diagnosis can be made only by someone who can see the spiritual side of man. Sometimes I think we feel like we're going crazy inside,
Mm.
but sometimes, and I had a therapist who kind of told me this, Bill, you're hurting in all the right areas.
Yeah.
Boy,
Yeah.
did that help.
Yes.
Areas that some therapists and some scientists are reluctant to talk about.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
right? Now, that's your
Oh, yeah.
experience too, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, Bill. And especially, I think it's gotten a little bit better in the last 20 years or so. I think more and more therapists are recognizing, well, let's go back. So, like around the time of Frankl, maybe they were recognizing the biological and the psychological. Then there was an evolution with biopsychosocial. And now, more and more, there's more of a totally holistic perspective of biopsychosocial spiritual. And so more therapists are recognizing the spiritual dimension, but there still are a lot who are not, and they have no training in how to do it, even if they do recognize that it's important.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know the vocabulary, they don't know how to approach it in terms of suffering or healing or what this means. But yes, Bill, like you were saying, and quoting Frankl, attending to that spiritual dimension, that part of ourselves that transcends our biological life, our psychological life, and our social life, that there's something deeper than that. And he would call that sense of meaning, which we might call in recovery a sense of connection with power greater than ourselves.
Right.
That's what Frankl would call
And
meaning.
it's greater than the ego.
Yeah, yes, for
You
sure.
know,
Greater
it's
than ego.
to
Yes.
switch to Jung, it's self with a capital S.
Yes, the deeper, truer self within us, huh, Bill?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and again, like the little token in recovery, to thine own self be true.
Right.
And so in recovery, through the steps in fellowship and through logotherapy and Jung and other resources, we can
Mm-hmm.
find that true self that's been covered up or run away from, and then manifest that, like you were talking about earlier with Bill W. We can manifest that then. Living a life, rather than living a life of quiet desperation, we live a life of meaning and truth.
Let's pause for a few minutes here, because I think this is very important. The pain, the suffering that's going on in the life of an addict. I'm missing life. I'm not connected to life. The only thing I've found is now killing me,
Yeah,
the addiction.
yeah.
You know, I make a big point of saying that the word that's missing in step one is the word hopeless.
Okay.
To me,
Uh-huh.
it's the message of step one.
Uh-huh.
And you can't stay there long. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it kind of pushes you into step two. Oh God, if there's a God, or
Yeah.
whoever the hell is out there, if
Yeah.
anything's out there,
Yeah.
you know.
Uh-huh.
I hit bottom in Cleveland, and I didn't have the language. It was a great place to go to hit bottom. I always recommend. I don't know how it is today, but I'm telling you, back then the river was on fire. I mean, it was hell in reality, you know. and
Yeah.
and where was I going with that? Good Lord.
You're getting drunk in Cleveland, I think.
Oh, I know what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I didn't understand it. But my ego, the ego that I had put together
Yeah.
to confront the world, face the world, function in the world,
Yeah.
it could not sustain itself.
No.
And it was falling apart. It was crumbling. I could
Yeah.
actually feel that inside of me, Tom.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, that was it, you know. And so I'm thinking, am I going crazy?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we would use alcohol to temporarily shore that up because it was terrifying.
And it was a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what at that time, what else was there? I
What
mean,
the hell else are you going to do?
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That agony that you're referring to, Frankl called that a couple of things. One is the existential vacuum, where it's like,
Right.
knock, knock, who's home? Nobody's home. There's just a vacuum there waiting to be filled, but it's a vacuous life experience.
Right.
No sense of meaning or connection. He also called it existential frustration.
Right.
Like most men lead lives of quiet desperation.
Right.
I can't get no satisfaction.
You're going to
That
break into
kind of
song here in
existence.
a minute, aren't you?
Where's my guitar? So that's what Frankl referred to that, Bill, that hitting bottom,
Yeah.
that existential, like King Lear on the Heath in Shakespeare's play, where he is hitting bottom. He's totally exhausted himself and who he was, and that's the way we find ourselves, like on the Heath, screaming at existence, and screaming at the heavens, hoping for redemption somehow.
One author, Robert Johnson, whom
Mm,
I love,
yeah,
kind of makes the point. It's like a lot of us wind up being suicidal at this point,
Oh, yeah.
you know?
Oh, yeah.
And he says, well, you're kind of right. You want to kill the self,
Yes.
but it's the little self that has
Yes.
to die
Yes.
so that the greater self
Yeah.
can come into being.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, he just met with compassion and understanding. So I mean, I just love it when a new guy or gal walks into the rooms of recovery. They are in touch with something that people who have maybe been there 3, 5 years have perhaps lost touch with,
Yes.
and that's that desperation, that
Yes.
willingness to go to any length.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing.
And again, the hope of recovery, if you all we have, and there are all these role models in recovery of people who have turned their lives around, and we begin to hope, well, maybe that could happen with me too. I wonder, maybe that can happen with me.
God knows I'm smarter than those people.
Yeah, right.
They could do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sometimes our illness works in our favor, you
Yeah.
know?
But Bill, that whole thing too about hitting bottom, and instead of reaching for a bottle, we reach out for help in that moment of utter despair and moment of coupled with humility. And when we reach out, we are not greeted with judgment. We are greeted with compassion and love, which makes it an easy door to start to walk through.
Yeah,
Although that can be scary too. But
absolutely.
but to be reached out to by the fellowship with no judgment and with compassion and welcome, we're really glad you're here. We're really glad you're here. We need you here. And you go, what?
Yeah,
Yeah, like you were saying, Bill. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Because I forget. I forget,
Yeah, we can.
you know? And you just reminded me
Yeah.
of the inner madness. Can't tell you how many people took that drink for me. I'd
Oh, yeah.
watch people in recovery and they'd go out. Now I'm going to watch this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I never saw one, you know, come back or be successful in going out.
Yeah. Right.
Maybe there are a few. I don't know that weren't my friends. I mean,
Yeah.
we were bottom feeders,
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah. That's
uh,
right. Yeah.
good stuff. Frankl says a therapist can help a person tap into his or her search for meaning, but only if he or she acknowledges the suffering that comes from not having it. That's what you've been talking about. He goes on
Yes.
to say this: meaning must be specific and personal, a meaning which can be realized by this one person alone. For we must never forget that every man is unique in the universe. That's the end of the quote. And I hear people, sponsors, I probably said it myself, 12-step people talking about terminal uniqueness,
Yeah.
that there's something wrong if I think of myself as unique.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's really true.
Yeah.
We are unique.
Yeah. Yeah,
Talk
Bill.
about that.
I think Frankl would agree that it's not an either or thing, it's a both and thing.
Mhm.
And that on one hand, and this is the part of the beauty of recovery, is that when we hear each other's stories, we can identify, yes, I felt like that. I did that. That's me. So that's that commonality being part of the family of man and the family of recovery, where we start to identify like feelings like joy and celebration and agony and loneliness and emptiness. And we can all identify with that. So we have that commonality. And on the other hand, though, Frankl did say, like you just read there, Bill, and I think an interpretation that's appropriate within the 12 steps is there has never been a person like you in the whole universe, and there never will be. No one with that DNA, no one with that psychosocial makeup, no one with that educational experience, no one with the experiences that we have had, and the potential that we have to put that all together and make our little difference in the world. No one else, it's like a true artist is a true artist, not like anyone else. That's what we appreciate about great art, huh? It's uniqueness, the way, so whether it's music or ceramics or painting or some type of visual art. And so Frankl would agree, and I think deeper down in AA, as we get to know each other and we've listened to a number of fifth steps, we realize we're all very much the same and we're all unique in our own way. And it's in a beautiful way. Now, I think maybe where the thing about terminally unique might come out as a criticism in the program is sometimes we might say that to someone we're friends with, or maybe we're sponsoring them, and they're almost refusing to identify with others. Like, I'm not
Right.
like that,
Right.
or that never happened to me. And then we say, yet. And no, listen a little bit deeper. If you listen more deeply, you are like that. So it is kind of a confrontation about don't deny the commonality that we have. I think, Bill.
No, I think that's right. I think that's right. One of the big takeaways I got from reading Frankl's book was I was asking the wrong question. I used to go to the bars, and the theology teacher, and we teach in high school in New York City, and we'd wind up there till 2 o'clock in the morning debating what's the meaning
The
of
meaning of life.
the
Yes.
meaning of life.
Yeah.
Give me a drink. What's the meaning of life? And Frankl said, stop asking that question.
Yeah.
It's the wrong question.
Yeah.
What is the meaning of my life?
Yes. Yeah. And
Totally different question.
yes, totally. And he would say, it's the demands of the day. Wake up, take a look at your life. What's needed today?
Today, yeah.
What is needed today in terms of my self-care? What is needed today in terms of being a husband or a wife or a father or mother or a grandfather, grandmother? What's needed in my life in terms of my job and how I show up there? What's needed of me in my 12-step program and how I speak up to share or do coffee or chair a meeting? That's the meaning of my life today. My patients are so grateful that, because when they think about that, Bill, they think, holy mackerel, I have to be Gandhi or Martin Luther King if I'm going to have lead a meaningful life. No, it's the little circle. And Frankl said, our own little circle, our job is to fill in that circle every day as best we can. That little circle of my life. That's the meaning of my life today.
I'm doing a funeral on Saturday for a guy who was resolutely out to become himself. And one of his stories that he told over and over again was Rabbi Zusia, something like that. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong.
Yeah.
And the rabbi said, when I die, I will not be asked, why were you not Moses? I will be asked, why were you not Rabbi Zusia?
Yes, yes, yes. Being true to ourselves. Yeah.
True to yourself, become yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the uniqueness that is within each of us.
Yeah.
That is waiting for the courage.
Yes.
The courage.
Yes. And that, yeah, Bill, and that's where Frankl and all the existential psychotherapists would say that one of the primary virtues is courage. The courage to be, like Paul Tillich talked about,
right.
And like the second part of the Serenity Prayer, the courage to change the things I can. And courage, of course, comes from the Latin and French word "cor," that means heart.
Heart, yeah.
So many, when we get to the program, we're disheartened. We've lost heart. AA speaks the language of the heart. We become heartened, and we gain courage. We are encouraged. We are enheartened to say yes to life in spite of everything. And Bill, if you don't mind me, being a therapist right now, I just want to check in with your listeners. And I'm wondering what they're thinking right now when they hear us talking about, it's not about the meaning of life, but the meaning of our life, my life. What I hope they're finding the meaning of their life, that circle, their life today. What are they? And meaning is very much about engagement. It's not about reflecting. It's
Right.
about engagement. And so I just wanted to throw that out, Bill, okay?
Well, since we're throwing things out, what I'll throw out is, and this is the opportunity for two-way prayer.
Yes, yes.
This is the opportunity to go inside,
yes,
to put your little ego down
Yeah.
and to start listening to the greater self, the voice
Yeah.
that is within.
Yes.
And you ask that question tomorrow morning, guys.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What is the purpose of my life?
Yeah.
And then have that voice tell you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
this. So we're doing the for those guys who are
Yeah.
on YouTube. My grandkids showed me all sorts of magical things you can do
Yeah.
if you do a double thumb or a
Yeah.
thumbs up or a thumbs
Hey,
down or
and
make a
Bill,
heart.
let me point out one thing about this journey of meaning too. All right.
Yeah.
By the way, I love the graphics.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Frankl did say that there are times when we're going through transitions in life that we don't know the meaning of our life. So
Yeah.
sometimes
Okay.
it really terrifies people. And it's like I'm doing something wrong or my life has no meaning. But, like when we're retiring, when our kids leave home, maybe we've moved to a new city and we don't have a home group and a sponsor yet, or at times of transition, there is some emptiness that needs to be filled. And he said, don't panic, kind of trust the process and wait for this new meaning to evolve in your life. So tomorrow, when people are doing two-way prayer, if they don't have an answer that comes up right away, and again, this happens after divorce
Right.
or when we get married,
Oh, sure.
when there's grief and loss in our life, and when someone asks themselves that question, what is the meaning of my life today? If nothing comes within that time of prayer, Frankl would say, and I think the Oxford group would say, trust the process. Just be with that in the moment and trust that a sense of meaning and that connection with your higher power will evolve and it will emerge. Just trust the process, right, Bill?
The two things I learned 51 years ago that were drilled into me, can't get more simple than this. One is don't drink. What did I know of God's will for me? One
Yes,
was don't
yes,
drink.
yes.
I never heard a voice saying, Bill, it is my will that you should go get a scotch and a soda right now. Never, no. I
No,
knew that.
yeah, don't.
The other one that I knew at a very deep level was don't run.
Yes,
And that's what you're saying.
yeah,
You got to stay through it.
yes,
Wilson has a quote, you can't get over it, under it, around it. You just got to go through it.
yes, yeah.
And
And
it can
again,
feel
like you,
excruciating. It can,
yeah, that's where the courage comes in. And
that's right.
Frankl would say, and I know we'll talk more about this later, but he would say, face your fate without flinching.
Face your fate without flinching.
Yeah.
The three F's. When you're feeling effed,
Yeah.
cube it, because there's three of those puppies
There you
there.
go. That's good, Bill.
Well, listen, I'm going to wrap this thing up. We're halfway through what we had thought we might get through. It's like the last time we had lunch.
Yeah, yeah, Bill.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm gonna put a wrap on this. It's just a lot to absorb. Some folks who listen to these, if it's one like this, they'll go back and listen to it two or three times to kind of catch some of the flavor. And I think there's a lot of it that you've laid out there for us, Tom. So it's been really good. It's been really good.
yeah,
And you're going on vacation for a week or so
yeah,
out to the Carmel coast, I guess it
yeah,
is. And
yeah.
so when you come back next week, it's going to be even better.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
looking forward
geez.
to it. I'm looking forward to it, Bill. And Bill, as always, it's great talking with you. And I do want to say, my intention in being with you, Bill, and sharing this is I hope that I can share a couple of things that might be helpful to a few people. That's really my hope and my intention in entering in this dialogue with you. And so I hope that has happened today, and I hope it happens in the future as we share with people, Bill.
Well, if nothing else, you helped me.
And me too, Bill.
And my dog was sucking up some of the good vibes, Tom. So we got two down. We got two down.
All right.
Listen, you have a great vacation, and I'll look forward to our next visit. And we're going to kind of continue with the introduction. Encourage you guys to go get a copy of the book, The Doctor and the Soul. It's the third edition. Don't go buying one of those first editions; they cost too much money anyway. But the third edition, paperback, marvelous, marvelous introduction. We'll finish that up, and then we will start looking at the meaning of life, the meaning of death, the meaning of work. Beat meaning to death here. That's, but it's going to be good. It's going to be really, really good. So, Tom, thank you once again. Thank you guys for listening. And if this has been helpful, hey, let a friend know about this. There's more to recovery than just not drinking or drugging. It's about learning how to live and learning how to find meaning and purpose in your life. So thank you so much. God bless, and keep coming back.